Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Geek Warning podcast from the Escape Collective, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know this week in the world of bicycle tech. We've got a bunch of stuff to talk about today, including some new bikes from BMC, Enve, and Liv. We've got a huge overhaul in Fox's suspension range from model year 25. We've got some new hubs and shoes and clothing and headsets and wheels to talk about. We're going to talk about cleaning water bottles, because that's going to be a good PSA for today. I'm James Huang here in Boulder, Colorado. I have partially most of my voice, sort of. Joining me is Escape Collective Senior Tech Editor Dave Roman, Sydney. Ronan's back from his long trip in Belgium for the Spring Classics and our first ever member summit event, but he's still digging out from a pretty massive pile of images and audio files and stuff, so he's going to take a break for another week. Dave, got a question for you.
Yes.
This is going to be yet another one of those questions I have for you where you are absolutely unprepared for the answer.
I would say choose whichever throat lozenge you like the flavor of.
No, that's not what I was going to ask you. If you were a contestant, you were a contestant on a hypothetical game show where you're trapped overnight in the store of your choosing and you're allowed to walk out the next morning with whatever you can manage to carry, what store would it be and what would you take home with you?
It would be a machine shop, and I don't know how I would carry it, but probably a vertical mill.
Oh, interesting. Would you sort of just like stuff all the bits inside the mill or something?
I'd walk in with cargo pants and a hoodie, so I've got extra pockets. And yeah, I guess carry as many in the mill as possible.
That is an entertaining thought to put in my head here, but I mean, I guess you would have the whole night to figure out how you're going to move the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
strong
I'm
belt.
not sure.
Strong belt with how much I'm going to load up those pockets. But yeah,
I'm not sure that would be a successful pitch to a TV network, so maybe that show is never going to actually come to pass, but fun to think about anyway.
I remember as a kid watching a TV show where a kid would have 5 minutes to run through a toy store with a shopping trolley and grab everything they wanted. Or maybe it wasn't 5 minutes, maybe it was a minute or even 30 seconds, and there was desperation. But yeah, anyway, it's a fun show. I think it wouldn't be as entertaining if it was just me in a tool store.
Man. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into the news because I'm not sure how long my voice is going to hold out. First up, Dave, I think it's safe to say we've both had pretty positive experiences with BMC's Roadmachine all-road endurance road bike. BMC has just announced their third generation version, which is pretty cool. It's got similar design language to the previous Roadmachine, kind of various straight edges and kinks, very much still a BMC. I'd say if it doesn't say BMC anywhere on it, you'd still know what it was. Comes with 32 mil tires standard. It's got room for 40s. BMC is describing it as quote, a bike for all riders, unquote. There's also an E version with a TQ mid-drive motor. It's got a slightly less aggressive fit and kind of toned down handling, bit more stack, bit shorter reach.
Is this compared to the previous version? Or
compared to the previous version, yes.
Okay. Oh,
so it's a little less aggressive than it was before. Claim weight, not terrible, 963 grams, so not groundbreaking. I think it says a lot about what it's supposed to be. 63 mil trail figure across the board, though, so it's still not a slug in terms of handling. Pretty good in terms of mounts, hidden fender mounts front and rear. It's got down tube storage, integrated bottle cages with a few extra mounts, integrated rear light. It's got a built-in chain catcher. There are different cockpit options depending on what version you go with. Fully hidden cable routing, and what's actually kind of cool is it has, like a lot of mountain bikes out there now, it has full-length internal guides for easier routing and no rattling, which is nice to see. I like where BMC's gone with this.
Yeah, it looks like a great bike, and I think it's probably worth mentioning that the Roadmachine is kind of a defining bike of the category. Like, if you think of modern endurance, I'd say the original BMC Roadmachine got us here. As far as, like, I would say the Cervelo Caledonia was based off of the BMC Roadmachine, or greatly inspired by, and it's been a pretty cool bike for a number of years, and I'd say in recent years the main limitation with it was tire clearance compared to other bikes in the category. And room for 40s now? I mean, that's
room for 40s.
Not complaining about the tire clearance anymore.
What's funny is it still has a pretty short rear end. I think it's like 415 or something like that. And it really wasn't that long ago that I would have killed for a lot of those characteristics in a cross racing bike. Sure. And now with that much clearance and decently low weight, and the Roadmachine has always been a pretty comfortable ride. I unfortunately was a little too busy in order to bring this thing in time for the announcement, so I don't have a review ready for this thing. But hopefully I can make some space for that soon, because I think it'd be a pretty cool one to check out.
For sure, yeah. And as we've said many times in this podcast before, endurance-style bike with a taller stack and shorter reach is what most people should be on. So always happy to see more options here.
Yeah, that, and it's nice that even though that bike offers that sort of kind of more accessible fit, that it doesn't look like, it doesn't look lame. It still looks like a pretty nice kind of racy looking bike. Speaking of that sort of bike, Enve's got a new drop bar model to add to the kind of growing collection of complete bikes, I'd say. This one's called the Fray, and actually sounds very similar to that BMC. It's also described as an all-road / endurance road bike. It's optimized for tires between 31 and 35 mil and also fits 40s. Also has built-in down tube storage. Also has front and rear fender mounts. Got a, again, slightly taller stack, shorter reach than Enve's more road racing oriented Melee. This one's got kind of more ostensibly aero profile tubing. It's a little quicker handling than the BMC, but not a whole lot. Similar frame weight too. Claim weight per 56 centimeter frame is 900 grams. Enve says, quote, "The Fray is the road bike for those whose cycling priorities have shifted from weekly racing to a broader range of cycling objectives where performance is still critical to meeting one's goals." Unquote. AKA,
you're getting a bit too old for crit racing, but you still love to ride road bikes.
Yes. Or like maybe you have a more keenly developed sense of self-preservation than you used to.
Yeah. There's a reason why I don't write marketing copy.
That would actually be a fun game, Dave. Like, what sort of marketing copy will we come up with?
Just rewrite press releases. Make press releases real.
Bit of a tangent here for anyone who has seen the Home Alone series of movies. There was, I think it was it was either like a Family Guy or kind of like one of those cartoon series. And there was like a little video snippet that you could find online that said like Home Alone with burglars that aren't dummies or something like that. And I won't reveal the punchline, but you should look it up. It's pretty dark. It's very funny though.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dave, I do agree that I find it interesting that for as long as endurance road bikes have been around, it almost seems like it has taken this long for the stigma around them to go away, because now we have so many, honestly, really cool options.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that if anything, I think the stigma's gotten worse. I think these bikes used to be far cooler when Fabian Cancellara and Tom Boonen were racing on them over the cobbles. But these days, I mean, it really is a category of it's, away from the racing, and that's been the struggle for endurance road bikes in recent years. That said, fair. I think the all-road category is, at least within the US, is become attractive enough that these bikes are being sold on that rather than anything else. But
I mean, it almost seems like companies now don't feel like they need to make excuses or apologies for them like they maybe used to, or like you could always kind of tell that it almost seemed like they were making them because they felt like they had to, not because they wanted to. Mm-hmm. And now it seems like they're making them because they realize that a lot of people understand that this is actually the bike that they should be riding. And speaking of the Roubaix, I do find it kind of interesting how no one who is sponsored by Specialized actually rode a Roubaix at Roubaix last weekend. Which,
well, I mean, the race bikes are so capable, and those riders don't need a more upright geometry.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say, because I'm actually finishing up a review of that Roubaix SL8. I personally think it's actually a fantastic all-around road bike, but it is quite telling that no one used it in the race. And I honestly think it's not so much because partially because traditional road racing bikes have become so incredibly capable in terms of tire size, for sure. But I also wonder if in some ways it's kind of a testament to how some racers are riding Roubaix differently than they used to. I mean, because they always say that when you hit those cobbles, the faster you go, the less impact they have. And as occurred this past weekend, they are riding that race faster than ever. So, and also there's a lot less mud than there used to be. We haven't had a truly wet Roubaix and a men's Roubaix anyway in quite a while. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, your results may vary. I guess is probably the answer with that, as far as whether what the pros do is applicable to what more regular people like us do. But I would say, going back to the Enve Fray, I mean, it to me, it looks a lot like, as you say, the BMC Roadmachine. It looks a lot like a Cervelo Caledonia. And I mean that with absolute praise. I mean, this bike actually does look incredibly nice. It's priced like an Enve, so it's not going to be the sort of bike that you see a heap of out there, but it looks to me like they've really nailed it. And as far as complaints I've had in recent time about endurance style road bikes or this style of road bike not having enough stack in the front end, it looks like Enve's answered for that as well. So I really like what this bike is doing. I'd be keen to ride one. But yeah, it's got, to me, and at least on paper, it has a lot of things right.
I'd like to see some more colors, maybe, or at least a custom paint option or something to that effect. But Envy's not producing these in-house in Utah like their custom all roads, so I can understand how those selections are a little bit more limited. But the three colors that they have are maybe a little, I'm not going to say stodgy, but they're a little dark. I feel like wouldn't mind if they brightened up a little bit.
Yeah, fair enough. I think there is one bright one, but
Viper green. It's still kind of dark.
But yeah, it's got,
anyway.
I mean, this frame's got internal frame storage. It's got threaded bottom bracket. It's got a round seat post.
It ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, the geometry looks really good. I think if we see more of this in the bike industry, I think people will more and more get on bikes that actually fit them.
Yeah, and it kind of like what you were saying earlier, it is actually very refreshing to see this kind of continued separation between bikes that people actually buy and ride versus what pros are racing.
Yeah,
it's kind of nice that we're seeing a little bit more that those two things don't necessarily need to be linked. Dave, we talked about Liv's new Peak Advanced short travel mountain bike just a few weeks ago.
We did.
And now that company is following up with a longer travel model called the Intrigue X. What are we looking at here?
Well, the Peak was just that of what was perhaps coming to the Anthem, which is the men's version of the cross-country bike. And yeah, the Intrigue looks to be a glimpse of what will perhaps happen to the Trance X in future, which is Giant's do-it-all trail bike. So yeah, the Intrigue Advance, it's a longer travel bike than what we probably normally talk about. It's a 150 front travel, 140 mil rear, and yeah, it's a mullet. So you've got a larger 29 front wheel and a smaller 27.5 on the rear.
Some of them are anyway.
No, they all are. But sorry, let me clarify that. They all can be a mullet. The extra small and small come stock as a mullet, and they have to remain that way. The medium and larges come stock as a 29er front and rear, but then they can be set up for a mullet rear wheel. But yeah, it's got internal frame storage. The geometry looks really good. Probably pretty good value as far as bikes go. But yeah, for me, I guess the big story there is that it's just proof that once again, Liv, and obviously this comes, through Giant as well, but it seems like they're really prioritizing the Liv brand, the women's brand within the company by releasing these new models first with Liv and then perhaps following them up later on with the Giant equivalent. I think it's pretty cool to see that they're giving so much attention or opportunity for attention to the women's brand.
That may very well be because Bonnie too, the person within Giant who kind of kickstarted the whole Liv project in general, she's now the chairperson for Giant and has been for a little while now. So she's running the whole show. So
yeah,
Liv was definitely her baby. And it may just very well be an initiative by Bonnie to be like, okay, we're tired of playing second fiddle here and it's time to head to the front of the pack. So yeah, pretty neat. The bike itself looks pretty neat. I also like that it has adjustable reach, which is something that we're not normally used to seeing in a whole lot of bikes, certainly not from a mainstream brand.
Other than Specialized.
But it looks pretty good, I think.
Yeah. No, it looks like a great bike. But yeah, I think from a more of a marketing, broader company strategy point of view, it's really cool to see this sort of happening more and more from within Liv and Giant. And that's, historically, and you look back just a few years ago, and Giant used to release a bike, and it's kind of like you'd get like this little snippet at the bottom of a press release being like, oh, and there's a Liv version too.
Right.
Whereas nowadays, it's like we're releasing this new Liv bike that's unlike any Giant, and and then not mention anything about the Giant coming, but it's very obvious that it will. It's a unique take within the bike industry where so many other brands have basically decided just to roll their women's models into being unisex versions. I think Liv sort of stands alone and as a true women's brand. And yeah, it's really cool to see from the world's largest bicycle manufacturer.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, Bonnie's running the show, and it is her decision to make, and it's a pretty cool decision. Yeah. Speaking of mountain bikes, Fox, as I mentioned at the beginning, they just unveiled their new range of suspension forks for the 2025 model year. Most of their brush stocks are the same. Big changes, for sure. Dave, how big a change are we talking about here?
Well, Fox is celebrating 50 years of business, and I guess to celebrate that, they've basically overhauled everything.
And made everything gold. Everything's very gold.
Yeah, so the gold, they've always had the Kashima, well, not always, but for a long time they've had their Kashima stanchions, which are sort of used on their factory level, their top-end suspension. And they've matched that with like matched lowers, but that's kind of a limited edition thing. So not all forks will be that color. They'll have the more regular colors as well. But yeah, and that's a limited edition to celebrate those 50 years of business. But 3 new dampers, which they're using across pretty much the entire range of forks. So the 3 new dampers span from everything from like the 32mm fork, cross-country forks, all the way through to their 40 downhill forks. The dampers, there's a Grip X2, a Grip X, and a Grip SL. So the Grip X2 replaces the old Grip 2 damper, and that'll be found in forks, longer travel forks with like 36, 38, 40mm stanchions. The Grip X is a more simple version of the X2, and that'll be found in the 34 and 36 forks. And then the Grip SL, as you can imagine by the name, super light. That's for the cross-country forks, so like the 32s and the 34s. And yeah, all of them feature a coil-backed independent floating piston, which I will let you all check out on various mountain bike websites for an explanation of what that's doing.
We can give just a quick primer on what that is. I mean, essentially what you want to do in an oil damper is keep air from getting into the oil, because once air mixes into the oil, then you can kind of get oil foaming, and that pretty much kills your damping performance. And an IFP is basically just a piston. In this case, it's a coil spring backed piston that sort of pushes down on the top of the oil. And that's just a way to sort of keep the whole thing sealed up and allow for the oil volume or the interior volume to change as the fork cycles through its travel without having to worry about air getting in there. RockShox does this by using like this big rubber bladder that expands when the fork moves through its travel. And Fox apparently decided that it would rather use a coil spring backed aluminum piston into an aluminum cylinder, and they apparently feel that is more reliable, which, I mean, I think at face value, it seems like it should be more reliable. Time will tell. But what's also nice is Fox is saying that the diameters of these piston heads and stuff are quite a bit bigger than they were before. So I guess this lets them do some more fine tuning of the oil flow, like the X2 damper, for example. Suspension companies use basically like super, super thin little stainless steel shims to control oil flow. They're sort of like as the oil moves through the piston hole, it sort of like flexes the shims past so that the oil can move through. And they're using something like triple the number of shims in that X2 dampers. It's much more controlled oil flow than it used to be. And then the middle ones are actually quite a bit lighter. So like that Grip X is 120 grams lighter just for the damper than the X2. So so they're shaving quite a bit of weight out of these things too. The chassis have not changed except for the 32 step cast, which is an all-new chassis. It's very interesting that Manitou's reverse arch patent has clearly run out because there is a lot more interest from other companies using that thing. It's the first time Fox has used something like that in a mountain bike fork. And it's
arguably
pretty
not the
wild
last.
Looking. Certainly not the last, because it does make sense. Manitou's argument behind that has always been that because the arch is behind the fork, it lets the arch be like a little bit shorter and kind of allows for some more crazy shaping to keep the stiffness keep it a little higher than if the arch was in front. And Fox apparently is on board with that, certainly enough to change their kind of iconic 32 to suit.
Yeah, so I mean that 32 step cast they're claiming is 40% stiffer and 100 grams lighter than before. So it's now the lightest fork they've ever produced, and it's sitting at around 1,300 grams for a 29er wheel 100mm travel fork, which puts it just slightly lighter than a SID SL fork. So yeah, it's impressively light. For me, it's a bit of a shame that it's only limited to 100 mil travel at this point in time, but dare I
know,
say,
it's killing me. It's so wishing it was 120.
Dare I say, they're probably, if Crystal Ball isn't broken, they're probably working on a 34-step cast with a similar arch design. And that will surely follow. It's crazy to think that that'll be a 20. If I'm imagining correctly, it would be a 2026 release, and we're only in April 2024, and we're already talking about 2025 Fox. But anyway, the future is here.
Dave, you and I can check in with each other in about a year or so and see how good that crystal ball is, because I'm kind of thinking that you're probably right, just based on where the direction where things are going here. Because I think it's telling that Fox did an awful lot of work on the internals of these new forks, but didn't change the chassis at all, except for that 32.
And new bushings in all the forks, but that's pretty minor.
Yeah, but as far as like castings and stanchions and crowns and stuff,
they haven't changed any of that. And same air springs. But so that Grip SL damper found in all the cross-country forks, it's quite a bit lighter than the old damper. I believe it was 60 grams lighter off the top of my head, but and it replaces the Fit 4 damper for anyone that's used a Fox fork over the last decade. But yeah, it's a 3-position damper, so you've got your open, firm, and closed mode on that one. So it is very much intended for the cross-country usage. You can get it with a crown-mounted lockout or a remote lockout, and I am very keen to see where Fox takes that and hope that they bring some kind of electronic control into that suspension in future.
Pretty neat. So it's nice to see that Fox is still alive after things that have been going on with the kind of post-pandemic crash in the bike industry. Fox, I had heard, had been kind of particularly hard hit, given that they're a very heavily OEM-oriented company as far as the bike industry goes. So it's nice to see that things are still up and running there.
They're OEM-oriented, but also they're kind of hitched their bandwagon a little bit to Shimano for quite a few years. And if anyone that's looked at new mountain bikes coming out in the past year, pretty much everything is like SRAM transmission. And with that, they've like committed, most brands have matched it with SRAM brakes and SRAM suspension. Clearly there's some very attractive deals happening there for buying the whole farm, buying the whole cow, I guess. But it's, I think perhaps I'm way off base here, but I think, part of the issue here is that Fox had so closely aligned itself with Shimano, and Shimano doesn't have a super attractive mountain bike offering at the moment, with nothing electronic and everything mechanical and looking a little bit dated compared to what SRAM's released. It's, who knows? Maybe if Shimano were to release something new, then that'll all of a sudden see Fox come, spike back to popularity.
Man, I mean, I think regular readers and listeners for Escape Collective will know that I'm still a pretty big fan of Shimano mechanical mountain bike drivetrains, but yeah, they're getting pretty dated, and Shimano pretty desperately needs to update that stuff, because even though it works really well, there's only so long you can keep the same thing on the shelf.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, let's take a quick break here.
It's coming around the outside. I think Balsamo is going to need to move up into a slightly better position here.
The crowd here is fantastic. A lot of people getting behind the riders here. The second group comes into the velodrome. They're out of it now. They're about 25-30 seconds behind.
All right, Ellen Van Dyke is still on the front here. Pfeiffer Georgie in good position in second place. Voss in third, and here we see the sprint. Lotta is already... No, it's Voss, and Balsamo is coming around the outside, but I think it's Voss, and here comes Kopecky trying to come around the outside. Will be Lotta, will be the world champion, Lotta Kopecky, the world champion, takes it, oh my god!
What an amazing finish.
She does it!
Wow, what a fantastic win there.
All right, what you just heard was a snippet of Wheel Talk, the podcast focused on everything going on in the world of women's pro cycling, brought to you by our very own Abby Mickey, together with retired pro racers Gracie Elvin and Lauren Rowney. Abby is a retired pro too, I should mention. If you haven't been paying attention to that side of the sport, you might be pretty pleasantly surprised that it's definitely some of the most exciting racing around, both on-road and off-road, I should say. So pull up your preferred podcast provider, search for Wheel Talk and Escape Collective, and then go behind the scenes for an inside look at what you've been missing. All right, back to Geek Warning. Dave, I feel like we haven't done an On Your Mind segment in a little while, and I think we should talk about hubs today. What do you think?
Sure.
So
I do have
there's
hubs on my mind. What are the chances?
Weird. There's a Canadian company, Project 321, was an American company. Got a super loyal following for their hubs, and after being acquired by that Canadian outfit in 2022, the brand had kind of gone through a pretty, I guess, long-running reboot of their product, and they finally just announced their third-generation hubs. What are we looking at with those, and why are we interested?
Well, we've seen these hubs coming for the last year. These are the hubs that have that the 6-lock design, which is basically a little ring that changes the otherwise center lock hub into a 6-bolt hub. That basically adds 6 bolts to the center lock spline, and then actually uses bolts and not a lock ring to attach that rotor. So you have one hub that does both center lock and 6-bolt and does them arguably without compromise. So yeah, that's this hub, and they're finally releasing it. And for now, it's pretty much pointed at the mountain bike market. They are teasing that there's gravel things to come, but I have to say it's on my mind because, well, for one, I've been using them for a few months, and being told that they're now finally available brought them back to the top of my mind. But also, they get a lot of things right, and I think they're a pretty good little case study into modern hub design and the features people want. And yeah, Project 321 have kind of nailed it in a lot of regards.
All right, let's talk about some of those features. What did you have in mind for that specifically? Yeah,
where to begin? I mean, from the outside, it's they're a J-bend spoke hub with tall flanges, which are they're a nice a nice hub to build up with. They produce pretty good spoke tensions, pretty even spoke tensions. From an aesthetic point of view, they offer them in 12 colors, so they're trendy in that regard. But then they take things a step further by actually offering anodized end caps, and then that 6-lock adapter for 6-bolt rotors can also be anodized. So you can kind of mix and match colors or match them up and make them pretty more than anyone else does in the market. I think that's a cool touch. Those end caps are completely interchangeable between free hub bodies, so no longer you have to match the end cap to the free hub body that you're interchanging. Super clever in that regard, so fewer parts to have to keep track of. The bearing preload can actually be adjusted with the hub in the bike, kind of like what Fulcrum and Campagnolo hubs offer. Yeah, I mean, the list just keeps going on, but then when you look inside of the hub, it gets even more wild. So there's 8 poles, with 3 steps, which gives an effective 288 points of engagement, which sounds very buzzy.
Well, and those 8 poles are split up into 2 sets of 4, so that doubles things up again.
Yeah, and those poles are magnetically actuated, so there's no springs. So it's the same. They actually licensed the design to stands, no tubes, and they've been using that in their top end M-Wave hub for. Is it an M-Wave hub? Am I making that up?
M-Pulse.
There you go. Yeah, they've been using that in their top end hubs for a couple of years now. So it's pretty well proven in the market already. But yeah, when it comes to service, not having to deal with any springs, you've just got the poles and a little plastic retaining ring that keeps them all in place. Super nice to work on. And then the bearings, they've got double row bearings in the drive side rear. So the drive side free hub body and the drive side hub shell both, sandwich a double row bearing, which is basically 4 bearings or normal size bearings, I guess. Yeah.
So essentially, it's almost like you have 8 bearings because the two outermost cartridges in the hub are kind of your regular single row, and then the 2 in the middle, the ones that experience the most load, those are both double row. So that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
Another thing about those pawls is. This isn't the first hub. This isn't the first pawl type hub to give you super fast engagement.
No.
It's like 1.25 degrees or something like that, which is not as quick as Industry 9, but 1.25 degrees is plenty quick. Yeah. But what I like about these is that the loading is totally symmetrical. Because one thing about the Industry 9 hubs is those are designed to actually engage only, and we're talking about the Hydra hubs from Industry 9 anyway. Those are actually designed to only engage one pawl at a time, typically. unless you sort of flex things enough to engage a second pawl. But you can design an axle and bearing system to mostly hold up to that sort of thing. But what I like about this symmetrical loading that Project 321 has is you don't really have to design against that sort of flex, because in theory there shouldn't be any.
Yeah, and it's probably worth noting, like, those Hydra hubs, really popular. They're a really nice American-made hub, but they do have a reputation for now breaking axles, which occur once there's some like bearing movement within them.
At least certainly the earlier generation ones, for sure.
Yeah. So, and that's sort of what this double row bearing inside, and the equal balanced engagement of the free hub is trying to achieve with the Project 321, is that side of the axle, that most stressed part of the axle, is fully supported by some incredibly wide bearings. So, yeah, I just really like what this hub is doing, and I think they've done their research. They obviously acquired a company with some very smart designs, and they've spent the last couple of years moving the manufacturing and getting all that dialed in. But I think it's a hub that people should pay attention to, because it's a hub that gets so many things right. So, on top of that 6-lock concept is very clever.
It's very, very cool.
Yeah. So I would say, up front, like, the big downside to it is that you need special bolts. It uses M4 size bolts, with still a T25 tool. So no new tools there, but yeah, basically what it means is you get this hub that, if you were to use center lock on the hub, and say you somehow screwed up and you cross-threaded the hub shell with the lock ring, and you've ruined the hub that can't use center lock anymore, you can then still use that 6-bolt adapter on this hub and use a 6-bolt rotor without throwing it away. Or the reverse of it, say you screw up a rotor bolt, and a rotor bolt gets seized, or you cross-thread the rotor bolt hole, you're no longer throwing away that hub, because you're just replacing a cheap snap-on ring, basically, with all new threads in it. So the future proofing of this hub is really impressive in that regard.
It's also worth noting too that 6-lock little device, Project 321 is saying that they're only certifying that thing will work on their hub.
Yeah.
But it will work on certain other center lock hubs, but they don't have a list of which ones are compatible with or anything. But there's a good chance that would also work on another center lock hub. And having used a whole bunch of center lock to 6-bolt adapters that do still require a lock ring, this is far and away the best adapter I've used. It's a really slick little piece.
Absolutely. And yeah, I've had enough adapters come loose, and being a lock ring, you can't do a lot about it other than try jam sticks in it and tighten it while you're on the trail. And this not using a lock ring is a cool feature. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of gushing a little bit over this, because I think for anyone looking at what hub features matter, should probably look at these and then take that back to your research and see what others are offering.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Project 321 is a brand sort of like Onyx. I think it's a smaller company, and I'd say it's safe to say they've had kind of like a little cult following. I've got a friend who he's a specialist bicycle wheel builder, Z-Spokes out in Charlotte, Connecticut. Vermont, sorry, Charlotte, Vermont, excuse me. And I asked him a while ago what he thought about Project 321 hubs, and he said his experience with them has been really good. So it's also good to hear from someone who's been building an awful lot of wheels in their day. Yeah, I also find it reassuring that this purchase happened more than 2 years ago, or I guess almost exactly 2 years ago. And Project 321 has, I'd say, kind of taken their sweet time to a certain extent with getting these out there. I mean, you and I have had kind of early production or kind of pre-production samples for a little while now. But I always find it kind of reassuring when it seems like someone hasn't rushed something to market. Like, like you get the impression that they really have taken the time to make sure it was right before they put it out there.
Yeah, 100%. And and I guess, looking at the broader market, like outside of Project 321, it feels like we're a little bit spoilt as far as hub choice goes. Like, it's pretty overwhelming if you're
There's
wanting
almost
to build
too many.
Yeah, if you're wanting to build some flash wheels at the moment, and you're trying to pick a hub. I mean, there's there's half a dozen of brilliant options at the moment. Like you've got, Chris King, Hope, Industry 9, Project 321, DT Swiss. Like it's just, I'm definitely excluding a few there, but and that's even before you start to consider the brands that many have forgotten about, like Hadley and I'd perhaps put White Industries in that corner as well in the mountain bike space. But it's cool to see. I'd say don't if you need some new mountain bike wheels, don't necessarily jump to looking at a Trek or Specialized shop have in stock. Maybe look around, do some research.
Yeah, I should mention these hubs aren't especially light, so they're not like going up against a DT 180 or something like that.
Sure.
A pair of hubs is about 450 grams, so again, not pretty average, I think.
Yeah.
And they're about $650 per pair, US.
Yeah. So not the perfect choice for a lightweight set of cross-country race wheels, but for a trail bike or enduro bike or anything like that, this sort of hub makes a lot of sense.
So solid, Project 321. We're rooting for you. All right, Dave. Let's move on to our PSA. So I got one this week. It's maybe kind of a gross topic, slightly. But I've become aware of the surprisingly common practice people have of apparently just rinsing their water bottles after a ride, or like not even doing that. They just like leave them on their bike and then refill them when they go, and calling it good. And like that just seems really kind of gross.
Yeah.
For God's sake, like please, like wash the things properly. That is my desperate PSA to everyone who may actually do that sort of thing.
I think I was guilty of this maybe 10 years ago, but these days, my bottles just go in the top rack of the dishwasher these days.
I mean, especially if you use any sort of drink mix at all, and even if you just use water. I mean, the water out of the tap is never totally sterile. Like your mouth is not totally sterile. Your mouth's on the thing all the time. But especially if you are using some sort of drink mix that has some kind of sugar in it, water bottles end up being this like perfect little breeding ground for mold and bacteria, especially in like the nozzle area with the little gaps and spaces and stuff.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to throw the things in a washing machine or the dishwasher, please, like at least hand wash these things with soap and hot water, and then let them dry completely on like a nice drying rack or something like that. I do put mine in the dishwasher and haven't had any issues with that. But at the very least, you see a lot of teams putting their bottles in like a big diluted bleach solution. So that is a good way to kill a bunch of stuff too.
Normally in a hotel bathtub, which is just...
hotel bathtub or like a sink or like a big plastic bin, something like that. But hence the bleach. So if you really, really want to make sure your bottles are totally sterilized, Elite has a neat little device, at least for its own bottles, called the Netto, that you put in the microwave to basically steam sterilize your bottles. It works pretty well. You can only do one bottle at a time, which is a little bit of a bummer.
I'm not a parent, but this feels like something that would come from the baby industry.
It kind of does too, although the stuff that I used to use when our kid was an infant, it was like a dedicated device for steam sterilization, and you certainly could use something like that. I bet if you were just Google or look on Amazon or go to your local store or whatever, baby bottle sterilizer, you could use those as well. But those things take up a lot of room too.
Yeah, sure.
But I will say one thing that I really have thought about a lot with water bottles in general. I used to be absolute devotee of Specialized water bottles because they were generally pretty high quality and like the tops didn't leak, stuff like that. But I've gravitated a lot more toward bottles that have designs that are a lot easier to disassemble. Because the one thing with the Specialized bottles in particular, you really can't remove the nozzle very easily at all, like the little squishy rubber bit that you pull with your teeth. So I've ended up now switching to, I guess my go-to are those Bivo bottles, those stainless steel ones. And partially because they're stainless steel, but partially because of that super good flow rate that they have, but also really because the parts come apart really easily. I can put everything in the dishwasher and everything just like actually comes out dry and clean. I don't have to worry about stuff hiding in any nooks and crannies anywhere. So yeah, I paid a lot more attention to bottle design. Like I've been using a lot of Elite bottles too, because that nozzle comes off pretty easily. Like I don't love the bottle as much as Specialized, but I like that I can get it clean and don't have to worry about anything hiding in there.
So yeah, moral of the story, clean your bottles more regular than you currently do. Unless you do them every ride, in which case you're doing it right. But please, for the love of God, don't leave your bottle on your bike when you take it in for a service.
Oh, Yeah, I guess people do that, don't they? Well, I guess we've seen worse things. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like if you are doing that, then you are guilty of what this PSA is about, which is you leave your bike, you consider your bottle to be a part of the bike.
Ugh, yeah, blech. Yeah, and then then like your bottles stay clean. Then you don't have to throw them away after a while, like a lot of people seem to. Anyway, point being, take care of your bottle. Take care of your bottles, and your bottles will take care of you. How about that? All right, let's wrap up this show with some other little bits of news here. Chris King's got 2 new headset options for smaller brands looking to incorporate fully internal cable routing without having to do a complete frame redesign. Yes, Dave.
I think we might have seen these on the recent releases from Baum not so long ago.
Yeah, very likely.
Who I think released his internal cable bikes, which we covered. There is an article on Escape Collective. But
these are now available to everyone. They're called the Aero Set 1 and the Aero Set 2. Yep. They're designed for bikes with these are actually designed for bikes with 52 millimeter diameter drop-in headset bearings, and with either 45 or 36 degree tapers, which should cover a whole bunch of stuff out there. They're available to be paired with either Enve or FSA internally routed stems. Available in the usual array of anodized Chris King colors. They'll cost $300 US with steel bearings or $415 US with ceramic ones, both with a lifetime warranty. I think it's no surprise to hear that I'm still not a huge fan of fully internal systems, but at least I'm glad to see more high quality headset options, since headset servicing with those things is definitely a big pain in the butt.
Yep.
Moving on to shoes, Fizik just did a redesign of its Vento Power Strap road shoes. Some people may be familiar with those. They're now known as the Power Strap Aero Weave. They still feature 2 big Velcro straps per shoe instead of boa or laces, which is pretty unusual. But they now have a super meshy upper material that Fizik claims is both lighter and even better ventilated than the outgoing version, which is kind of saying a lot since I tested that outgoing version and it is super well ventilated already. There's also a new lower weight carbon fiber plate. Maybe best of all, there's some very flashy new colors. Claim weight 184 grams a shoe. Retail price is $380 US, 350 pounds sterling, 335 euros. So definitely a high-end shoe. But yeah, definitely unusual that these use just, again, that big wide or 2 big wide Velcro straps.
Looks like a triathlon shoe from the early 2000s.
It does, kind of, and there's definitely some parallels there. But I have to say, having tested that older one, it was an exceptionally comfortable shoe. I kind of like that there wasn't anything like sticking out. And I mean, the hold was ridiculous. I mean, there is no way anyone was going to say that shoe didn't hold them very well.
You're not breaking boas off of barriers either.
You're not breaking boas off of barriers. You're not really worried about, snapping off anything or like a wire breaking, something like that. Pretty neat. As far as I can tell, Fizik is not offering these in their wide fitment, unfortunately. Either way, pretty neat concept. If you are in the market for some high-end road shoes, maybe go find a pair to try on somewhere. On the clothing front, Castelli just launched its latest generation of Gabba rainwear, including, quote, the most aero jacket we've ever tested and the pinnacle of foul weather race gear, unquote.
I'm sold.
It is. Yeah. How about that? Yes, it is an aero rain jacket, or I guess rather 2, as it's offered in both short sleeve and long sleeve versions. It's got a new slick finish that honestly kind of looks like a garbage bag. But our own Ronan McLaughlin's been using one for the last couple months.
Ronan was taking the embargo of that jacket very seriously. Word is he was like running through the streets of Roubaix, just being like, "Don't look at me, it's embargoed." Yeah,
he was actually riding in the jacket, but also riding in the sandwich board.
Yes, he's worn that on a few podcasts over the last couple of months, and been like, "Don't take any screenshots." He's been very protective of it. So there you go, Castelli. Your secrets were safe with him.
He's actually been so protective of it that when he went out to test it, when he went out on rides to test it, he wore another jacket on top of it.
Yeah, nice.
It was very, very waterproof. All right, last but not least, we've gotten a few questions from members about the little Y-shaped photo stick thing Dave and I have used occasionally. And I can say now they're finally for sale to the public. They were sort of this limited edition thing that California custom frame builder Stinner Frameworks they made last year at the Made Show for some journalists. It features a pretty neat collapsible three-piece design that kind of threads together. You can carry it with you pretty easily. You got little rubber tips to keep everything from slipping, and it actually does a pretty good job of keeping the bike nice and stable. They are a little expensive. They're $60 US, but maybe for some people it'll be the closest you'll get to an actual Stinner custom frame.
Yes, I agree. I like this more than the translucent Perspex shadow stand. That is another product that aims to do the same thing.
It is much more stable.
It is more stable, and I like that it's a little more tolerant of being able to get the bike more in line. This is a very niche topic, the idea
it's super niche, but at the same time, the only reason I brought it up is because people have asked us about it.
Yeah. I would like to know how many people that don't take photos of bikes professionally for media purposes are actually keen on a product like this. Like, how many people are going out there to photograph their bike to the point that they want to spend $60 on a stand?
7, 8, maybe
that sounds
9.
About right.
9 at most.
Yeah.
That said, that company that you were mentioning just a minute ago, that shadow stand company that makes the polycarbonate little clear wedge thing that we both have used on occasion. They made a version, I think they still make a version that is designed to be pocketable. And I have actually seen people post photos that use that thing. So there clearly are people who are interested in getting photos of their bike out in the middle of the ride. So, I mean, it is a very niche product, but there is a niche. So, yeah.
A third brand you might not be aware of, James, Nature's Choice. It's available almost anywhere where wooded or similar tree coverage is available or found. And available in all your local forests. And it's just organically sourced and gluten-free. And I find that they're a good way to, stick a bike upright.
God. It's very, very, very highly variable quality, however.
Yeah. I mean, you do have to... Yeah.
Inconsistent inventory.
It is inconsistent inventory, yeah.
It's flammable. Yeah. It's flammable.
It's flammable, but yeah, I mean, it's a high breakage rates as well. But anyway, I find them a good value option as well for people that are looking to prop up a bike in the outdoors.
For anyone who's missing the joke, that's a stick. FYI. Anyway. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of Geek Warning. Thanks as always for listening. If you're already a member of the Escape Collective, thanks for the support. And since we're a 100% member-funded operation, it means you never get bombarded with any annoying ads, either here on the podcast or any of the written content on escapecollective.com. So if you're a member, they not only get full access to all of that awesome content, but also our full library of podcasts, including exclusive members-only shows like Ronan's Performance Process Show and special deep dive episodes of Geek Warning. We're not going to have one this week. We should have one this week, but we're not because I can barely speak right now. So we're going to hold that until next week, FYI.
Sorry.
Dave's also got his own tools and workshop-focused newsletter called Threaded. And while that one's free, you still want to sign up so you can get it delivered right into your inbox every 2 weeks so you don't have to go hunting for it. And if you're not a member, it is a super quick and easy process. It doesn't cost you much. Just head over to escapecollective.com/join, enter a few bits of information, and you're good to go. I mean, you do have to pay us too. If you've been enjoying what we've been bringing to you since we launched last March, but you still haven't become a member, what are you waiting for? You, Steve, over there in that dark corner, I see you hiding back there. What are you waiting for? You'd think that we didn't find you, but we found you. So I don't know why you haven't signed up yet, but you can't hide from us.
Your approaches are so I don't know.
Angry?
They're a blend of creepy and angry, I guess. You've cornered Steve into this dark corner. He's already quivering in fear, and now you're just forcing him to sign up. I mean, sorry, Steve. We do want you to become a member. But
I do want you to become a member too, Steve, but I'm not sorry.
Wow. Jeez. Okay.
For the rest of you responsible folks, thanks as always for listening. We'll see you next week for another episode of Geek Warning.
Cheers.